sanctioned. Now, Russia is the most sanctioned country in the world, and yet this year its economy is set to grow faster than all advanced economies, according to the International Monetary Fund. Later today, the Russian President, Vladimir Putin, is hosting an international economic forum in St Petersburg. Our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg, is in St Petersburg with more on what we can expect to hear from President Putin.
Well, I mean, it's an international economic forum, so the economy is going to be top of the list. We'll hear a lot about the economy, and certainly the Russian authorities are trying to use this year's event, this year's forum, to say, look, we know we're heavily sanctioned by the West, but there are plenty of other regions and countries in the world ready to do business with Russia. So, I haven't seen this week many CEOs from America or Europe, but delegations from Asia, from Africa, from the Middle East, from South America. So I expect President Putin will make that point. But apart from the economy, there's going to be a lot, I think, about geopolitics. That's been bubbling away in the background in St Petersburg this week. The war in Ukraine, the soaring tensions between Russia and the West. In fact, earlier this week, in St Petersburg, Vladimir Putin suggested that Russia is considering supplying advanced conventional long-range missiles to others to carry out strikes against Western targets. That would be Russia's response to NATO allies allowing Ukraine to use Western missiles to strike Russian territory.
Steve, how is it then that Vladimir Putin is able to prop up his economy despite those sanctions? How is he circumventing them?
Yeah, with a little help from his friends, first of all, so countries like India and China. So, for example, Russia has redirected its oil exports from Europe to India and China. China's become actually a lifeline, really, for the Russian economy. But also, Russia continues to make a lot of money from its energy exports, despite international sanctions trying to slash the amount of money that Russia earns from, for example, oil exports. A lot of money is pouring in, and that is being spent on the military, on the defence sector, and that, in turn, is fueling economic growth. Probably short-term economic growth, because in the long term, a war economy that we're seeing emerging in Russia is hardly sustainable.
Steve, Western nations have been criticised. There have been people saying that some of those loopholes need to be tightened in order for sanctions to have real effect on Russia. What are we talking about?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, for example, the oil price cap. Now, this was an idea that came up from the G7 nations and EU leaders to cap the price that Russia can sell its oil around the world to no more than $60 a barrel. That was the idea, but Russia's been able to circumvent that. And also other sanctions designed to reduce the amount of money Russia gets from trade with various countries. Now, recently, the US Treasury suggested introducing secondary sanctions on international banks, for example, that are doing transactions with Moscow. If that happens, that will put pressure, I think, on the Russian economy. Now, that is, I think, an area of concern for the Russian authorities right now.
And that was Steve Rosenberg with more on the economic forum being held in Russia.